Hey Dollhouse people, Whitney LaBrie here, and this is where we left off last week in doing the Shining room box here, the Shining diorama. This is where we left off, so you can see here we have a lot to do today, you guys. So I need to build out the crown molding at the top here, and instead of buying one, I'm going to build it myself, and the reason I'm going to do that is because it's actually built into the top completely, and it actually has a soffit underneath, so I'm going to have to build that out. And then I also need to cut into those styrofoam pilasters a little bit so that the molding will be flush up against the ceiling and also the pilasters there. So I am going to build up the crown molding and kind of make it look like a stair step crown molding like you see in the actual movie. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just using different size balsa wood pieces here and then just laying them on top of each other to create that look. Pretty simple. And then here's how I did that. Just taking different size pieces of balsa wood that match up to the molding that I want to see in the space, and then just laying them one on top of each other, and it kind of looks like a tiny little staircase. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint them the same color that we painted the doors and the floor molding, which is a combination of an English lace and an antique gold. And it's really like 6 parts English lace and 1 part antique gold to get that color. And then what I need to do now is really glue the ceiling on, but there is one more piece of molding at the top that actually kind of frames out that crown molding that I need to go ahead and put in place. So before I glue it down, I'm going to add one more small strip of molding all the way around, and that will actually adhere to the ceiling. Okay, now all the crown molding is in place, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the ceiling in. The next step I want to do is work on this emergency pull and bell. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some bright red polymer clay, and you can already see I've got red on my thumb there because that red dye really gets in your hands. So just be aware of that. Some people like to use gloves when they work with polymer clay, and this is why, because a lot of times the color can transition over to your hands. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make a nice round ball here. I just need enough to maybe make the size of a small button. And then once I have that size, I'm just going to push down, kind of make sure maybe even it out. Make sure it's nice and smooth along the edges, and then that's pretty much my emergency bell. With the next piece of red polymer clay, I'm going to make a rectangle shape, almost like a little red brick. Okay, and then I'm just going to take a tiny little red ball, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of my emergency bell and kind of smush it in, so that it actually has the look of an emergency bell. I could also do this in another color if I wanted to, like a silver also, to kind of give it more of a metallic feel, but I'm just going to leave it as is. So now I'm going to take my little red brick and I cut out a small portion, you can see there, because that's the area where I want to put in a white pull handle. So I'm going to take some white polymer clay and just a tad bit, just a little, actually that's even too much, more than I needed. I'm going to roll that out and I'm going to cut out a small T. And then I'm just going to put that right inside that red box. All right, and you can see there that it looks almost like an emergency pull handle. All right, so I'm going to pop that in the oven. I'm going to bake that for about 15 minutes. And then once it's all cured, I'm going to take a toothpick and a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to paint in the word fire on my fire pool. And I'm using that toothpick, but you can use a fine paintbrush as well. That of course would also work. All right, and then when I did the R, I kind of closed in the top part of the R, so I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to wait till that paint is completely dry, and then I'm just going to literally take one tiny little dot of red and I'm just going to put it right in the center of that R to kind of fix where I actually filled in that R. All right, and then that should do it. And it's good to go. And now I'm going to go ahead and place that into our diorama. All right, now you guys, it's time to work on that bicycle. So Danny's tricycle, we see it quite a bit in the movie. We actually see it. He rides through that building about 3 different times. And the main thing of the bike that I have here is, you know, he's in a big wheel from the 70s. I have a big wheel here that's really from the 80s, so it's a little bit different. So I'm going to have to modify it. And the main thing, I think, for the diorama, the main thing of importance is going to be the seat, the shape of the back, because we see that triangular shape, and I think that's really indicative of the movie, and I think that's a really important piece. Everything else can be like the bike, but I think that part is going to be really important. So I'm just going to cut the seat off that it has already, and I'm going to sand down that plastic a little bit there with some sandpaper. And then I'm going to take some polymer clay in black, and I'm going to make that seat, and this is going to be much thicker than the one that's actually in the movie because I'm modifying something that I already have. And so I'm just going to make sure that it fits, and then I'm going to pop that in the oven and bake it. And then I did super glue it onto the bike, and I spray painted this entire bike in a matte black finish and let it dry perfectly. And the reason I did that is because it's going to be much easier to paint over plastic when you spray it with a matte finish first. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add all of the silver parts to the bike. And the basic colors of the bicycle are primary colors. We've got blue, we've got red, and we have white as well, and a little bit of silver. And so I'm going to go ahead and give this bike a little bit of a makeover. Okay, and then this is the completed bike here. And I will tell you that it will take a few coats of the paint. So you can see the kind of the progress here. Actually, when I took some of these photos, I still needed to do another coat of white. But overall, it's going to give us the same look and feeling as the bike that we see in the movies. Now that that's done, I want to move on to the lighting. You can see here that it's actually quite dark inside there without the lights. So the first light I want to work on here is the exit sign right there. So I did print up a couple different sizes of an exit sign as my template, and I used regular printer paper. I kind of wish I hadn't. I wish I had used cardstock, but I did not. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and take my very sharp X-Acto knife, and I'm going to trace out the exit letters. Okay, well, you can see through that. And then I'm going to grab some trash plastic here, which is like the see-through trash here that I don't even know what that was on, maybe like a lid or something. And I'm going to go ahead and glue it on both sides, actually. And you can see where the glue is, you know, kind of messing with the paper. That's why I should have used cardstock, but it will dry eventually and it will not be quite as see-through. And then I'm going to take my red permanent marker here, and I'm just going to go over the letters. And this is going to give the red glow once the light is installed. Okay, now the next step is I am going to cut out that exit sign to the size that I need, and I'm going to build a small back frame around it just using small pieces of balsa wood trim, and I'm going to of course glue that in place. Now I have purchased these small LED lights, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to the back of my light here. And I'm going to take a few other pieces of balsa and go ahead and glue and create a back to this exit sign. And then I'm going to go ahead and test it and make sure that it worked. I had already tested the single light by itself, but I always like to just double check before I do any kind of light installation, and it works. I also want to paint the back of it black, so I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. And so that's what that looks like. Even though you really won't see it, I still want it to paint it black. All right, so let's go ahead and install that. Turn it on, make sure that it works. Yay, it works. And now we're going to go on to the next lights. There's two tulip lighting here, single bulb tulip lights that are hanging from the ceiling. From Danny's point of view, we can see about two of those lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take plastic straw stirrers, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that gold. And then I have these two lights here. These probably came from hurricane lamps, but I don't know where those are. So I'm going to use those as my tulip lights. And I'm just going to take that straw and put it in place. And then I have these other small LED lights here that are going to be just single lights, and I'm going to thread those through. So I'm cutting those down to the right size. I'm going to take those, I'm going to super glue those into my tulip globes. And then I'm going to thread that LED light right through there. I'm going to turn my diorama upside down so I can mark the exact areas where I want these lights to be. And then once they're marked, I'm going to go ahead and I'm doing wire tape for this diorama since it's so small, only needs 3 lights. And I'm going to go ahead and glue those in place and test it out, and yay, it works. All right, so the inside is pretty much completed. Now we need to start working on the outside because you can see here that I've got 2 doors that are sticking out. We've got the wiring also that you can see. Overall, the foam board is not that cute. So I found this wrapping paper actually on Etsy, and I loved it because of course it has both of the 2 iconic carpeting that we see in the movie, and then it has the all work and no play from the typewriter. So I thought that these would be perfect to go ahead and wrap the outside of the diorama with these papers. But I initially was going to cover these doors because they're just the back side of the interior. But honestly, I think it's an opportunity here to really take this diorama to the next level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make one side room 237 because there's actually 2 iconic doors that we see in the movie, which is room 237. And then we also have the red rum door that Danny writes murder backwards on. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make the hardware and also the keychain for room 237. So I'm going to take my polymer clay and my red first of all, and I'm just going to go ahead and shape out a small little keychain that we see in the movie. So basically you're just making a little rectangle here, and I'm going to put a hole at the top so that we can link it to a key later on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some antique gold polymer clay, and I'm going to create the doorknobs for the red rum door and also for room 237. For the red rum door, it's just a small little oval shaped little doorknob with a circular back on it. And then for the room 237, it's more of a more modern door, and it just has your stereotypical turn knobs in the antique gold finish. So I'm going to create those as well. Now, before I bake them, though, I am going to take the key that I'm going to use. I'm going to pre-drill a hole in it using that little key so that when it comes out of the oven, the key will still fit inside because I don't want to bake that. Okay, now that they're straight out of the oven, once they're out of the oven, they're still slightly pliable. So I'm just going to take the one doorknob right there, and I'm just going to put my key inside it, and so that it will stay in there and it'll be just like that. Okay, so let's work on the red rum door. So this side, this door actually, it's already pretty close to the one that's in the movie. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough where it's going to have the same feeling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my pencil, and I'm actually going to, I don't always do an outline drawing. Sometimes I'll just wing it. But with this, I think it's going to be really important to get it as close as the movie as possible, where we see Danny write in Wendy's lipstick, red rum on the door. And of course, when she sees it reflected back to her in the mirror, she realizes that Danny actually wrote murder backwards. So I'm just going to kind of continue to look at the picture from the movie and try to get as close as possible with my pencil. So that way I can grab my red paint and I can go ahead over it again as close as possible in the red. And I'm just dry brushing it on so it'll kind of give the same look that Danny had using lipstick. And I got the U and the R a little close and I'm really not satisfied with the M. The M feels a little thick. So I'm going to go back over that with some cream color paint and a toothpick, and I will go ahead and just make some adjustments later once the red paint is completely dry. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and grab some trim. I really want to clean up the edges around this door where the wrapping paper sat, and I'm going to cut that out and then paint it to match the door. And then once that's completed, I will go ahead and glue that. I will use my blue tape to make sure that it holds while it dries, and then there you go. Okay, let's move on to room 237. So this wallpaper, or this wrapping paper, I love it, but it looks just like, of course, the carpeting that's actually in room 237, even though the orange carpet is what is actually outside of room 237, but that's okay. So I'm going to take a piece of wood here that is about the same size as the door, because room 237 is actually like a honeymoon suite, we're guessing, and it actually has 2 double doors. So we know that it's like a larger room. It's probably more of a suite. And I am going to take some cardstock and I'm going to cover up the other door because these doors are also really smooth and they're very modern. And I'm going to paint those in a very dark brown black color, and then I will go ahead and super glue those up there. So now all of a sudden we've got this really modern looking doors, and of course I need to make sure that I trim it out, also clean up the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well. Now I did also, just to let you know, I covered up the wood with the cardstock as well. So that I did that, of course, obviously, because wood and cardstock are going to take the paint a little differently, and I wanted them both to have that same look. All right, now that the trim is in place, I would like to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and add our knobs. But first, I want to go ahead and add that keychain, the red keychain that we see hanging from the door in the movie, to this doorknob key as well. So I will go ahead and do that. I'm just using a little piece of metal. It's actually a piece of jewelry metal to go ahead and thread through that keychain, and then also thread it into the key itself that's hanging out of the door. All right, super cute. And then I'm going to go ahead and super glue both those doorknobs right to the door. And then I took a gold marker here and just wrote in room 237. And I did have to go over it a couple times to kind of give the look I want. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. The doors are complete. And I really think that adds a ton to the outside. I'm really happy that I did that. It was a last minute addition, but I think it actually made a world of difference for the project. So the next step and last step is just to trim out the front and get rid of any look of the foam board that I used to make this box itself. It also helps a little bit too, because when I glued the wrapping paper, I only glued the trim areas to cut down on the amount of bubbling that you can sometimes get when you use paper like this. So the trim is actually going to not only frame out everything nicely, but it's also going to cover the bubbles in the wrapping paper. And so once that's completed, I also painted it in the same dark brown as I did the 237 doors. And then this is the end result, you guys. I'm absolutely ecstatic with the way this came out. I loved doing this project so much, and I hope that you've enjoyed it overall. One of the things with the twins there, the Grady twins, they actually came on a stand. I'll put in the description below where I got those, and I am going to keep them on the stand for now because I think it's fun. Maybe sometimes I'll have them laying down, sometimes I'll have them standing up instead of just gluing them in place, which actually was my original idea. So wait, what is going on in this room? There's like some movement in there. Oh my God, Tiny Whitney freaking scared the crap out of me. What are you doing in there? Get out of there. Jeez. Hey everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I'm Whitney. This is my little sidekick, Tiny Whitney. And we just want to say thank you so much for watching today's video. If you had fun today and liked today's video, please do us a big favor and just subscribe, like, comment, and share. I hate to give you some homework today, but honestly, it really helps the channel. Today's show was a suggestion from a viewer like you, so if you have any other suggestions for any future videos, please feel free to put those in the comments below. Thank you so much, and remember, in this crazy life, it's the little things that matter.